So thank you for joining me today. We have a very, very, very special guest, the wonderful, amazing Elizabeth Waddell, aka the CRA Helper. And I'm so excited to bring her to you guys today to share her amazing story, her amazing journey. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. This is such a blessing. And I would try to be not to be nervous on camera, but it's definitely different than a podcast. But I thank you so much for having me. I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and I thank you for agreeing to do this interview. You have so much to share, a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you have been in the industry for so many years. You have amazing online course. I mean, there's so much to get into, right? So let's start with where would you like to start with your education, your first role? Tell us about how you got started.
Yeah, because like we all have different stories. It's so funny. This is a job that nothing's identical. How you heard of clinical research and how'd you become a CRA?
Yeah.
So for me, I heard about clinical research in college. Like I knew I wanted for like junior high, high school, I wanted to be an optometrist. So I knew I wanted to be like doctor, medical, pharmaceutical type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, maybe neonatology, maybe pediatrics, maybe I was all over the place. And so then when I went to college at orientation, they had a great pharmacy program at Campbell University. So I was like, okay, pre-pharm. And so then I switched to biology. And then my friend had a brochure about clinical research. It was a new major at school. And when I read about that, I was like, oh yeah, total. I was like, I want to do this. And I actually switched to that major and stuck to it. So, so that's how I found out about clinical research. And I got my bachelor's and almost my master's actually by the time I finished. So that's how the education part came to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because we had to do an internship our last semester. And so I did it at a pharmaceutical company that manufactured drug at that location. So we were going by like GMPs, good manufacturing practices, rather than GCPs. And it was funny because my director was like, I really want to see you get into clinical research, but okay, you can do your internship here, So, but I learned so much in the short time I was there because I was in the compliance department. Mm-hmm. So I got to see how do they handle an FDA inspection? What do they do if there's observations by the FDA? How do they respond to it? So I did learn a lot. And eventually after that, like I worked there till like 3 months after I graduated. Mm-hmm. And then I interviewed at a company that also manufactured vaccine, and I was going to work in the lab, and I was offered that job. But then a recruiter called and said, hey, we're hiring in-house CRAs.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, oh, this was like two opposite ends of the spectrum to choose from. Right. And so I chose the clinical research in-house CRA job. So that's how I got my foot in the door.
And did you apply to that job?
No, I
wow.
didn't. So it is so funny how like just the path just opens up because to this day, because I don't think I know unless I had something to do with school when they were trying to find our internships. And it's funny because they called my work. I was working in the compliance department at that company, at the pharmaceutical company, and got a call at my desk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. So yeah. So they found me and it was crazy. And it was contract positions. They got awarded a study. So it was, they were hiring a good amount of in-house CRAs, and they started out contract. Then I went perm. And then, stayed at that company for like three years, I want to say, before I transitioned to my next CRO. So, yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that it was a contract role, because I'll get a lot of people that ask, how do I feel about them accepting a contract role versus the permanent? Mm-hmm. But I mean, in all honesty, if it's a permanent role, they can still let you go whenever they want to, right?
Yeah, it's so true, because at that company, even when you go permanent, you have to take a 2-week training. Back then it was 2 weeks, and you had to pass a test. So if you didn't pass the test, you didn't stay.
Right.
So like you said, and the contract, I'm sorry. My phone wasn't on mute.
It's okay.
Just an example of why you should be on mute. No. So I wanted to give a live
Interview.
example. Interview. So yeah, a live example of during teleconferences. So, but yeah, so I was still like W-2, but I still was getting paid by the hour.
Right, right.
The recruiting, and yeah, he would have our paychecks. Like we go down to the lobby and we get our paychecks once a week, and I was loving it. And so then we became perm with the company, and then I had to take the 2-week training. I had to pass test. And then I was a senior, or I was a CRA 1 there for about a year. Then I became a CRA 2 and went to the clinical department. And that's where I started on-site monitoring.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you moved from, when you got the in-house CRA role, you moved from in-house CRA 1, and then on to the traveling, the regional CRA. And you said that was about almost 3 years?
Yeah. So I was at the company 3 years total. So I traveled for about 2 years before I moved to another company. And, like once you have 2 years of on-site monitoring, like you're golden, you could go anywhere. Right. So, gosh, I ended up being a road warrior for like 14 years before I switched. I know. But, and yes.
We can talk about that later. I don't know how you deserve like a medal. I always feel like when I hear those numbers, like you literally deserve a medal.
You are so funny.
No, seriously. Cause I mean, you've done it. You know how it is. You deserve a medal.
You are so funny. And I didn't know because like my line manager would be like, do you want to be a lead CRA? Do you want to be a line manager? And I had some colleagues that would switch to being a lead. They wanted to be home. And I didn't know if that was for me, but I knew I wanted to train. So I kept saying, and then even, at a CRO, if you have a good performance review, you get merit increases every year. So even though I stayed in the same position, I was still getting like, raises. And so I was like, I'm responsible for me and my site, but you're right. I was constantly on the road, but I was like, if anything training does come up, that is something I would love to do. And so that's when, I got the call from my manager. There was an opening in the CRA training program. She's like, I put you in. And I was like, yay. So, then I interviewed for it and, got that position, and it was a managerial role. So I did switch to that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, going back before we go into that role, going back to monitoring, would you say that it was everything that you thought it? Well, you did it for 14 years, so you had to like, right? You had to like some part of it, but starting now, would you say, was it everything that you thought it would be, or was there some disappointments? What were some of the challenges you faced within the first couple of years? Because I don't know about you, but the learning curve for me was pretty steep.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I knew what the role was because in clinical research and in college, like managing monitoring clinical trials 1 and 2, that was part of the curriculum. So I knew what the role was, but nothing can prepare you for the life of a CRA. Like I until it actually happened and you're like, oh, what city am I in? What car rental do I have now? It's like, until you've lived that life, it's like, that I was not prepared for that. Not at all. But, and it's a catch-22 because there's a lot of excitement to it. It's like, people are like, oh, where are you going this week? And it's like, I'm going to Palm Beach, or I'm going to Manhattan, it's like, and that's kind of cool. And then it's not ever monotonous because like every day, every week is different. So that part, I'm like, okay, this is exciting. I'm part of this big picture in clinical research, but then, like you said, then it can twist to like burnout, never office time. You're away from your family. I'm away from my fur babies. And it's like, then I could have the burnout side. And so it's so funny. It's like a catch-22 because there's things I love about it. But then, like you said, there's, crazy travel stories in 14 years. And then also what I love too, what was really cool was signing up for all the different airline memberships and hotel points and stuff. Like they just add up so fast. And we were blessed with a lot of cool trips, that we got to take for free, and then you build such status being gone all the time. So one of the airlines, I was like chairman's preferred. So I was like constantly, I flew this one airline like that, connected through Charlotte because that was the best for me. And Yeah, I was like chairman's preferred. And if they had an opening in first class, I was in first class. It was just like, I wasn't used to flying. There was one period I barely flew coach. And it was like, wow, okay. I could get used to this,
That was me too at one point.
Yeah.
Now my status has dwindled down due to COVID.
Oh, me too. I'm a nobody now. I'm a nobody. So, but you're right. At one time it was like, wow, okay. If I have to be out on the road, this is kind of cool.
Right. That kind of makes up for it a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. It does. It does.
Wow. So, okay. Is there throughout your CRA career, I just can't imagine, it just seems like it's just so much information you had to acquire throughout that time, because especially depending on what company you're with, 1 year, it seems like it's like 4 or 5, right? Depending on your workload. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, 14 is like 30.
No, I can see that. I
mean, you know how it is. It's challenging. Like people just, like you said, they think about the glitz and the glam, like, oh, you get to travel. And then they think you just only go and monitor. But then there's so much behind the scenes going on that you have to take care of from a site management perspective on a day-to-day basis outside of just doing visits.
Yes, for sure. Because like you said, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. What were you about to say?
Oh, no. Because like you said, if you don't have the office time, you're constantly on the road, then it's like, okay, I'm finishing this report at the gate at the airport or a baggage claim or in my hotel. And it's like, it's funny when you're going through all these hours, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I was paid by the hour. It's like, you're putting in all this time and you're just burnt out, but yeah.
Yes. And that brings to me, I wanted to ask you about contract roles, 1099 contract. So is that something that you did at some point throughout your CRA career?
I didn't. But at one time, it was just constant, like, I felt like I was working late nights, constant all the time. I thought about that. I was like, man, it'd be nice to get paid by the hour, and at one point I thought about it, but then it was crazy. Like my line manager, this particular one was amazing. She noticed how much I was gone. And that's where I love the tip that I like to give of communicating. Like if you say, hey, I'm overwhelmed, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's just to admit, hey, I'm barely above water here, Right. And so she noticed, she was like, oh my gosh, you're gone all the time. And I had 3 high enrolling sites in this particular study, an interim data analysis, and 2 of them were chosen for QA audits because they were high enrolling. And they were behind on all this data review. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was like gone all the time. And she's like, okay, you're going to have, like, the sites are just going to have to be reallocated, on the study. Like you can't have them all, So she was working with my lead, and it was a blessing. I went from like all these days on site to like 8 days on site the next month. So I think when my schedule then started kind of getting better, I thought, I think I do like being comfortable here. And so I never did. That was my long drawn out answer of no, I've never done 1099.
No, but that's good for you to give the story behind why you didn't.
Yeah, it was close.
Because there's a lot of people that they want to be a CRA, but kind of like as a stepping stone to the next position, but they don't know what's next.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear different opportunities outside of, being a full-time employee with a company as a CRA, like what can come up next, and to hear your logic behind why you didn't, transfer over to 1099. So was there a particular therapeutic area or phase that you focused on, or throughout your monitoring career, did you kind of just have like a gamut of different phases and areas?
The majority was definitely phase 3 for sure. Okay. And primarily CNS. Like I did some respiratory, migraine. Let's see, I did some respiratory vaccine, and then I primarily did CNS. Okay. So, that was my big area, which I enjoyed. I did enjoy it. And one time I had to do SWOT visits. I had a study that closed down due to safety issues very unexpectedly. And so they were like, hey, can you come do some SWOT visits? There's about to be an interim analysis on this study. And it was cardiovascular. And I had never monitored a cardiovascular study. So I was like taking all these trainings on my own. Like, I want to get, I want to be very familiar, with this area, especially when you're reading the protocol and, they're talking about the background, the rationale for the study, and then and the inclusion exclusion, they can't have this, but they can have this. It's like, I need to know all this. So, yeah, I was taking trainings for that, but yeah, primarily at CNS, and I really do enjoy it. Are you in oncology?
I am.
Are you? Okay. Whoa. Now you deserve a medal. Now I've had to do some like assessment visits of CRAs that are on oncology studies, and that's intense. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty rough, but CNS is, I would say, kind of up there too. I always say oncology and CNS, I would say the neuro and oncology, I feel like they're both kind of, they're not easy.
I will say there was one Alzheimer one I was on, and it was like 14 inclusion, like 40 something exclusion.
Those are rough.
When somebody audited, they were like, goodness. They're like, this is like an oncology study, like with all this stuff, and some of them were pretty intense, but still, I still think you
are. They are. I've had an Alzheimer's study too. And they have all those scale assessments. And then, like you said, the IE is like super long. And then they have all these scans and all these labs and all these procedures. Like, it's complicated. And they typically have a long history, right? So AEs, you better become best friends with AEs and comments.
Oh my goodness. And see, I thought about you with SAEs. With oncology, yes. And then like always being in hospitals for a lot of the sites.
And it's not like that SAE where it was like one day, but it turns into 10 days and 1,000 pages of medical records.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm like, I don't. So, yeah.
He's like, why do I do this to myself? But I like oncology though. It's been my thing though, ever since, even back in graduate school, I did my thesis on oncology. I worked in oncology labs from a bench science perspective. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's my thing. So it's not as bad for me from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
But all those AEs and comments, it's just,
I can't even imagine. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You're in it because you have to be, they always want oncology experience. So do you feel stuck? I think we've changed who's interviewing, but still, I really want
No, this is perfectly fine. I guess I personally don't feel stuck because, like I said, that's my thing.
Gotcha.
So I've kind of built my career around it. Like, even when I first got my CRA role, like my very first entry-level role, I came in, even through the interview process, I told them that I wanted to be an oncology CRA. Whoa, so when I came in, they kind of simultaneously trained me to not only be a monitor, but then also to be an oncology monitor. So it was like, I've always known that this is the direction I was going in. So I don't necessarily feel stuck, but there are people that want to get out. And once you get in, they say it's like a black hole. You can never get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. No, but because they say you either love it or you hate it. It's like,
yeah. And trust me, there's days where I want to just break down and cry. And there are days where I have just broken down and cried. Me too. You get through it. Especially with me lately, I've only been doing phase 1, kind of sometimes phase 2 really early. Yeah. So that's even this other layer of like, why am I doing this to myself? And then CAR T studies, they seem to like, I don't know how I got to the first one. And now that I've done the first one, now it's like, that's all they want me to do.
Yes.
And then lately I've been doing these oncolytic viral studies. So it's like, I'm falling into like this, I feel like this hole of like very specific niche oncology.
Yes. And then phase 1 too. I've never done a phase 1.
Yes. So it's intense, especially with the oncology studies. It's pretty intense.
Oh my goodness. So travel's intense and what you're doing is intense.
Yes, but I don't recommend someone, even if I was about to say maybe if you had like an MD or something, but even if you did, I wouldn't recommend doing oncology as like your very, very first trial that you're monitoring. Because even though they trained me simultaneously, they still kind of slowly segued me into monitoring oncology trials. So I did like cardiology first. There was a neuro study, which wasn't really much better. Like a gastro study. Like I've done other studies, and at one point I was doing a bunch of pediatric studies. So it was like I did those things and kind of got my feet wet before, and then I co-monitored on oncology for a little bit, and then hit it. They threw it all on me.
And then you were there. Oh, wow. That's a cool experience though. That's cool that you got to get all that monitoring experience under your belt before you went in.
Yeah. So I would definitely recommend that if possible. I wouldn't just go straight for oncology, because most of the time when I hear people that do that, they really do end up quitting because it's just so much. And all monitoring is not that way.
Yeah, that's true.
It can be fun and not as like overwhelming in terms of medical records, because that's the piece that oncology really I think that's the hardest part, is the overwhelming amount of medical records you have to go
through. My gosh, I can't even imagine, because I thought I had a lot with the elderly population, with the medical records. So I can't even imagine oncology.
Yeah. That's the most intense part. But enough about me.
See how I did that? No. So,
but yes, getting back into your story. So, you have a good little range of therapeutic area experience as well. And regardless of the phase, like for the most part, it's when it comes to monitoring anyways, like it's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
So, wow. So before we even move on into, your management role, I would like to ask you to share with us like your most challenging travel week, or your most, the hardest week that you had, maybe the most states you had to go to, or the most on-site days. Like describe your most challenging week.
Let's see. So with 14 years, there was tons. No, I'm just kidding. But there was, I had two unique stories, because like, of course you have the missed connections, canceled flight, or, all those, and luggage that disappeared, just, things like that. So I've had those for sure. But there was one that I had where I got in like at 2 a.m., of course. And as I'm getting to the hotel and I go in and check in, don't you love when you get to your room and the key doesn't work? So then I'm like lugging all my stuff back down, going to the front desk. And so he, reprograms the key. I go up, same thing, doesn't work. And it ended up, it had nothing to do with the key. It was like the thing on the door. I don't know the term for it, but like that you swipe the key.
Yeah.
That didn't work. So that would involve like getting maintenance, taking it apart. And that was the very last room. No one could get me in the room. Very last room. They were sold out. So there was nowhere for me to stay. And this was like 2 a.m. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, there's usually, we have 24-hour numbers, to call travel. And so I called and they, got me another hotel. And by the time I got there, checked in and went to bed, it's probably like after 4 a.m. and I had to get up for a visit. So, yeah, so that was crazy. That was a unique one. And then another one where I was co-monitoring in Fort Lauderdale, and I drove like an hour and a half, like outside to where I was going to a site outside of West Palm Beach. See my hotel. This is probably like 10 o'clock at night, start to turn left, and someone ran a red light, slammed into me. And and my car like completely did a 180. And so that was just a nightmare. I was like, and so all the airbags came out everywhere. So it was a blessing I wasn't hurt, but and if, it was just awful, but,
Wow.
so the cops did say, they ran the red light. It was their fault. And then the cop actually drove me to the hotel because I couldn't drive my car anymore because all the airbags deployed.
Right.
So I get to my room, and of course you're trying to do all the contacting, like who to contact to let them know. And then all of a sudden, I got really blurred vision. I couldn't see, like I was seeing spots. I'm like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I'm trying to like email what happened, and thank God my project manager was online. So he calls me. He just happened to be online late. So at least I got everything reported that I needed to. But then I ended up having to take a cab to the ER down the street because of all the spotty vision I couldn't see. So they had to like run all these tests and everything. And then my project manager called my PI and was like, yeah, she probably won't be in tomorrow. So
Wow.
yeah. So, but the next day was a 2-day visit. The next day I did go because, I was like, if not, I'm going to have to come back and all this would have been in vain, So one day it was so funny. It was crazy. The PI was awesome. He called, he told me about a pharmacy to deliver. So they delivered, I had some medicine. They gave me like muscle relaxer and, to kind of help me heal the next day. And, I forgot what else, probably like ibuprofen or something. But, so I just kind of rested in my room, was on my computer, but I was like, I'm going the second day because I'm not coming back. And I was like,
wow,
stick within the monitoring intervals. So, but my project manager said I didn't have to, but I did. And the site was really awesome. They were like, not letting me carry big binders, and the airport was really cool. They, helped transport me because I did have to use the chair because I was really sore. So,
I can't believe you didn't go home.
It was
I still think you don't deserve a medal.
And it was just like, I didn't want this to happen in vain and have to come back. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have to push on through. But I think the scariest part is like, that happening and you have your family and you're alone. And I think that was kind of the scariest thing, so there, but yes, thank the Lord. It ended up being okay. But that was weird. That was a different experience for sure.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
So definitely a tip is be aware of all your communication that you have to do if something like that does happen.
Yes. And that's another thing people don't think about is all those logistics that we have to be responsible for.
Yeah.
If things like that do happen. So what would you say was your best experience or your best week or day when it comes to monitoring?
Yeah. Oh, I've had, like you said, those visits were just, everything just goes smoothly. The travel goes smoothly. And especially when you're in the maintenance phase of the study too, like, you're just coming, I know exactly where I'm staying at my hotel. There's a Dunkin' Donuts in the parking lot. There's I like everything. There's the gas station, like everything. You're just kind of in your routine. And then it's so cool where the hotel staff, like, oh, hey, Miss Waddell, how's it going? Like they're used to you coming in like every 4 weeks, and so that's nice. And you have a great visit. You feel like you accomplished so much. So I love those. And then of course, when you're doing like PSVs and SIVs, those are great. Those type visits are great. And then just getting back, your travel has gone smoothly. So I don't want to paint a picture where everybody's scared to travel, but, so there's the good times. And of course there's, the horror stories, of course, what you remember. So, yeah, but yeah, so those smooth times and you get everything accomplished and you don't have any unexpected, like, oh my gosh, I reported SAE and that just changes everything, or you might have a canceled flight on the way home when you're exhausted. Yeah. So when that doesn't happen, it's like a great week.
Yes. And I wanted you to mention that just because, like you said, I don't want people to think that it's all bad, right?
Yeah.
But the
reality is so long. Yeah.
But the reality is it's not all great. And I want people to be prepared because, they say they want to do this. They get started 6 months in or 3 months in. They're like, I can't do this.
Exactly. And I've had some trainees that didn't know that it wasn't going to be 9 to 5, and it's just like, you just kind of want to look, like you said, up front because you're like, oh, this isn't for me.
Right.
So that's why, like you said, I like to share it. I don't want to scare people, but I do, like you said, want them to be prepared.
Right. You need to be prepared because it takes so much time, energy, investment to train an entry-level candidate.
Yeah.
And you get them on board and you don't want to go through all that. And they end up quitting. Not to mention they're taking an opportunity for somebody else who really didn't want it.
Exactly.
I just try to kind of, give both sides of the picture because it's
Exactly.
part of the job, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
No way around it. Unless you want to be an in-house monitor.
Yeah.
But as far as regionally monitoring goes, this is the life we signed up for.
It is. It is. And like I said, and I did it for so long. So it's like, so I did like love it. Maybe because the adrenaline. Now, of course, I was a homebody on the weekend. I didn't want to go anywhere.
Me
And
too.
then, and then sometimes I would like travel back late at night just to be in my own bed. So it might be like a 20-hour day by the time I'm home. I'm like, yeah, I'm in my bed. So, I mean, I loved it. But like you said, just those times like, what am I doing? Then it's like, I do kind of want to be off the road. And so, it's kind of back and forth, but
Yeah, because then you miss it, right?
yeah, no, you do. And
I think I'm in miss it mode now. Because COVID has had me home for a while. Because with the oncology studies, most of the sites, well, all of my sites, they won't let you on.
I can see that. Yeah.
So, some people are still traveling. They didn't really skip a beat, but oncology is like, no.
Yeah, I can definitely see their immune system might be compromised. And,
Yeah.
I can see that keeping them safe.
Yep. And then, of course, they don't like to see us anyway. So any excuse. Any excuse.
I know exactly what you mean. Yes. Yes. It's like, they probably are loving it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
No, they honestly are. We're not. Some sites, I would say at least they pretend to be excited to see me, but for the most part, it's not like, we're not the highlight of their day.
No. Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. But I was one step. It was funny, like the front desk staff though, like when I'm pulling my laptop bag, they're like looking at me and they're just kind of like thinking I'm a pharmaceutical rep. And, they're kind of like, I'm sorry, like he's not available to lunch. I'm like, oh, I'm here to monitor. Oh, okay. It's just like, everything changed, it's like, but yeah, the front staff looked like annoyed when I'd walk in with my laptop bag, but, but then they got used to you.
Yeah.
Then they got used to you coming all the time. So
that's funny.